Welcome to the Dream Journal. From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the healing powers of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with you.
So there's now those vital minutes, time is keenly found. We are not alone, water over stone, even if you're by yourself, even if you're by yourself.
In the words of Carl Jung, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Today's music is called Responsible. We'll be talking today about nightmares, nightmares demystified. A conversation with a 4-time author will be talking about the ins and outs of nightmares and how to stop them. Also known as RadOwl, our guest will be Jason DeBord, moderator for the massively popular Reddit dream sharing page r/dreams. I'm your host, Catherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. The Dream Journal is also a weekly podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review. Seems like it's time for another review. Who's going to be the one to jump on there and give us a review? If you will, thank you so much. But really, the most important thing is to tell your friends. After all, my main thing about the show is to get people talking about dreams. Maybe one way you can talk about dreams is to say, I've been listening to this podcast. Check it out. Archives are also available at ksqd.org/the-dream-journal. Okay, so I'm starting with my personal dream work. Listen to that music for a moment. So, well, my ex-husband showed up in my dream again. It's so funny, years and years later. But, you know, there's a way that I was kind of able to, tell him, no, you got to go now. So, you know, why do we still dream about these things years and years later? I don't know. But there's something about the way that he showed up this time is refreshing, actually, and that I was able to recognize that I didn't like what he was doing. And, you know, I don't know if I really asked him to leave, but once I recognized that I was not happy, the dream shifted. And it shifted to a place where the waves were like pounding the shore, these 100-foot tall waves. 100, and I wanted to get down to the ocean, but I'm like, oh, not right now. And then maybe there's something about my anger, these big waves, these big feelings that are kind of washing up. And then there was kind of another shift, and I went into a train station nearby. Why not? Train station. And there was my new lover, a dream person, not anyone I know, but it was a new lover, and I just was able to kind of melt into his arms. And so, you know, maybe there's a way that this is kind of telling me the journey that I went through. I never became lucid during the dream, but it was just somehow a kind of a gift to recognize that I have moved beyond. Whew, thank goodness. All right, I'd like to say hello to Jason DeBord. Hello, thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Catherine. Yeah, I'm doing all right. How are you?
Excellent. I'm doing really well. We have a bit of a storm going on over here in Santa Cruz, but we all got in, and we're happy to keep you company at home as you hunker down here in Santa Cruz, which I understand the storm will be sweeping across the country the next few days, 4 or 5 days.
Something to look forward to.
I know. So, J.M. DeBord is the author of 4 books about dreams, and I believe there's several other books that are not about dreams. And he's also the lead moderator of the largest online community for dream sharing, which is called r/dreams, which is a Reddit page where he is known as RadOwl, RADOWL. He created the Dreams 1, 2, 3 process of dream interpretation and the online school RadOwl's Dream School, found at dreamschool.net. He is the host of the popular podcast, The Dreams That Shape Us, which is found at dreamsshapeus.com, plus any podcast platform that you would care to tune into. And you can find Jason at jmdebord.com. That's jmdebord.com. So, Jason, I met you at the Tucson conference last June, or July, I guess it was. Was that really the first time we met?
It was.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, it seems like we kind of just jumped right into feeling really comfortable with each other right away. And I got to learn a little bit about your Dreams 1, 2, 3 method. But I wanted to ask you to kind of go personal for a little bit and maybe tell the listeners about this 30-year ordeal that began as a nightmare when you were a child.
Oh, the deep end.
Yes,
okay, well, let's start there.
That's how we do it here.
Well, we're gonna hook in your listeners today because I want to say first that you know me from the IASD in that we run the spectrum from full academic all the way over to dream workers who are immersed in the sort of mystical ESP side of it, the very deep waters of dreaming. And so I'm trained, in, shall we say, classically, the theory and the schools of thought that go into dream interpretation. And for a long time, I wanted to be exclusively seen that way, even though I was having these other experiences such as precognitive dreams and the dreams about kind of seeing things that could play out in the future and people that I would meet, places that I would be. So I was familiar with this other side of dreaming, but I didn't really want to go there. And I knew that I had had an experience with dreaming that took about 30 years from the initial nightmare until I ended up in a shaman's office doing a ritual to banish this dark thing out of my life. So let's go back to the beginning. Yeah. I was 9 years old, had a nightmare. There was a man in a black Cadillac who was following me as I was biking down the road. I suddenly get struck with fear and I'm trying to get away from him. I know that he wants to claim my soul, which means I will die and he will have the best part of me. I didn't really know what a soul was when I was 9, but I knew enough to know that I didn't want this guy to have it. So I hid from him and he found me. And then the final scene, there's his shadow starting to cast over me as he's like reaching for me. It was, so then you wake up and you're sweating, your heart's pounding. You're 9 years old. You're trying to understand this experience that you've had. You reorient to reality and you kind of go on and forget about it. But that dream stuck with me. That nightmare stuck with me. And I was in an enrichment class in 7th grade, and we had this dynamic teacher, Mr. Whitmore, who he had us do all these wonderfully enriching things. This is the early 80s when education was a little more wide open than it is now, and in an enrichment class, we could really do a lot of fun stuff. He brought in a dream analyst who I would guess now that he was a mix of Jungian and Gestalt. And he said, does anybody in the class have a nightmare that really stuck with them and they would like to explore the roots of it? And I'm like, yeah, I got one for you right here. So I explained the dream to him. He takes me into a hypnotic regression process, takes me into the dream and asks me to find the resolution for it. Now, Catherine, with experiential dream work, you know how this works. You take the dreamer back into the dream and play with it in your imagination to see if you can find some kind of imaginative resolution to it within the structure that the dream provides. There's a framework, a story, or a narrative. So I do that, and I find that there are these two families that are in a feud. We're talking Hatfields and McCoys here. Oh. They hate each other. And the analyst asked me, he goes, see if you can find a resolution for them. And I think about it, and I kind of have my Rodney King moment where I'm like, can't we all just get along? Right. Like violence is stupid. Y'all are hurting each other. You're in pain. Just stop it. This is pointless. And the dream turned really unstable, and the analyst took me out of the whole process, and it was left unresolved.
Okay.
So I go into my teenage years, and the way I describe it in the book is that I was an animal. I was a wounded animal leaving a blood trail. I mean, my psyche had a gash in it, but I didn't know enough at the time to understand what it was. And the man didn't appear in my dreams again until I was in my 20s. And he started sending his minions to come and kidnap me, or he would make things appear like he was like a magician, like a sorcerer, and he could make funnel clouds appear and chase me all over the landscape, like and these were terrifying dreams. So it keeps going, and I started having a sense of him being a presence in my waking life, and that he could work through people and circumstances to get me off track, to fill me with things, dark thoughts and feelings, or just to sidetrack me in a way and keep me in the gutter. I experienced a lot of things through my 20s, especially, that were very hard. A lot of them related to addiction and things along those lines. I always felt like there was something more to it than just the standard story. Oh, you have addictive impulses because your parents divorced when you were a teenager and you have this void in your life that you're missing. I mean, that's what therapists told me when I was growing up. And it kind of made sense, but it didn't really fit into me in a way that really filled out the full picture. Mm-hmm. So I get into my 30s and now my late 30s, and I'm still on this addictive path going back and forth. I'm using dream work and prayer and meditation, but at the same time, I got all this other stuff going on that's really sending me into a spiral. And things reached a head, and I was referred to this shamanic practitioner named Steve Rogat. I make the appointment, walk into his office, tell him my story, and he says, the analyst, when you had that vision of the two families, he said what you were really seeing was something that happened generations ago, where someone in your family on your maternal line stole the husband of another woman's husband. And she was so filled with darkness that she hired a practitioner of black magic to cast a curse on your family. Now, can you imagine? You're sitting here hearing this and you're going, oh my God, is my mind going to blow up and confetti's just going to blow everywhere? Or is the wizard going to come out from behind the curtain and say, oh, this was all just a test to see whether or not you are grounded in the reality that everybody else is? Because this was strange. But oddly, Catherine, I knew that there was a truth to this and that I should just keep going forward with it. So we went into basically a ritual. He put on the shamanic drumming. He brought out all of his implements, his feathers and his rattles and all of his tools. He was also an energy worker, so he had crystals and all these other things. And we get into this about 90 minutes in, and we're really starting to get tired, and we can't quite reach whatever the climax or finale is. We're trying to find this man. Mm-hmm. And I will say that the moment when we made the breakthrough was when he said, Jason, look up. And I look up in my mind's eye and physically look up at the same time. And I see the eye of providence over top of us and a swirling funnel cloud around us. And he said, the funnel clouds in your dreams, which I hadn't told him about. He said, the tornadoes in your dreams are not here for you. They're there for him. They want to take him home. And I went, wow, I get it now. So in that moment, there was like this channel that opened up to me to him so I could communicate directly. And it was like Luke Skywalker walking in Return of the Jedi for the final battle with the Dark Lord, except he won't fight. I was taught that your anger would only make you more, entrapped in the energy, the dark energy. And I was ready for this moment because my mentor had prepared me for many years by exploring the mythology of Star Wars. And I got into that moment with him. I felt the direct channel between me and this man who had been a sorcerer in waking life. His body eventually died, and he was in like a bardo or a purgatory type of state where he was stuck between places, but he could still affect what was happening in physical reality using the power that he had as a person and, who understood how to use dark power. And that's when I felt that channel to him, and he wanted me to hate him. He wanted this thing to keep going. And I said, no, I forgive you in the name of my family and in my name, and now go into the light. And Catherine, I felt this rush of energy come up from beneath my feet, through the floor, through up my spine to the crown of my head. It went to the peak of that pyramid, and then the shaman clapped, and you could feel all the energy just sort of explode out at that moment, and the man was gone.
Wow.
And so that was the end of my 30-year ordeal.
Wow. So that was like kind of an exorcism, really, just of generational trauma or generational curse.
Yeah, that's how I would describe it. And I didn't believe in such a thing until I experienced it for myself.
Okay. So how have your dreams been since? I mean, do you still have some nightmares, but there may be more ordinary nightmares, or this guy is just gone?
This guy is gone. I have a sense that there is a healing process that's happening down the generations of my family who were affected by him. You know, one of the things that the shaman told me after he did his consultation with the spirit guides, and I'm sitting there in his office going, ooh, you know, I'm much more used to this stuff now, but initially I was not, I was not into any of this. I didn't understand it, and it felt just too weird to me. But he said, the curse was that the women in your family would marry tragic men. Now, if I met you on the street, as this guy basically, he didn't know anything about me other than what I had told him in the initial consultation. He didn't know that my grandmother had married 5 men and outlived them all. He didn't know that my dad was a tragic man. And she didn't know that my great-grandmother, as far as I know, all the women in my family line have married tragic men. He didn't know this. And to make such a statement when you've just met someone based off of your intuitive understanding of a person and their family lineage is a hell of a risk to take if you're cold reading someone, because I was pretty skeptical. I was like, but when he said that, I'm like, damn, how did you know that? How do you know that about my family history? This isn't something I talked about. It's not written on my forehead, so, but I have had a sense that the healing is done and that it's continuing to this day. I haven't had, knock on wood, I have not had what I would call a real nightmare in at least a decade. Well, maybe longer. Anxiety dreams, stress dreams, but no nightmares.
Okay, yeah, no. So I often feel like that the work that we're all doing in our dreams and in our personal growth is kind of healing the generations, and so hopefully you've freed your family from that curse.
I think so, and I think that's what I was here to do. That's what he told me. He said, he revealed a lot of things that he could see about past lives and lives between lives, which I'm now a moderator of the reincarnation and past lives subreddit. And this was another journey that I went on to go from skeptic to, I won't say believer, because when you believe in something, it implies that you don't know whether or not it's actually real and true. I know that reincarnation is a real thing, but I didn't know it when I was first introduced to it through a dream when I was in my 20s, and then I went on an exploration of this thing. And, so anyway, we are, this is something now that I've incorporated in as part of my waking consciousness, and that I can explore it fully without that skeptical mind always trying to cast doubt on it. And now I'm able to kind of fully utilize the sort of intuitive powers that it gives me through my dream life, which has really helped me to develop myself on the one side as a rational person who can operate in physical reality, and then as an intuitive person who can operate in the other reality, which of course is what dreams are teaching us to do, is to help us to learn what reality really is. And I think it's a lot more than just what we experience through our physical senses.
Right. Well, I'm definitely interested in that topic, but I want to spend a few more minutes talking about nightmares. And I'm not. I think that your situation is probably pretty unusual. That lots of people have nightmares that are not necessarily a result of family trauma and require exorcisms. Or is that a mistake? What do you think? Do you think where do you think nightmares usually stem from, and how can we get rid of them? Because people who suffer from nightmares really do suffer.
That was the point of my book.
Yeah.
I wanted to write. I shared my experience because I was running across other people who had their own experiences with generational trauma, and they needed validation, and they looked to me because I'm the quote unquote expert. And when I say that I've experienced something like this, it validates their experience. So I did that, but I also wanted to write the book for people who need an entryway into understanding their dark dreams and nightmares. And so I structure the book mostly as a conventional dream interpretation guide. And I embed a lot of information into it that's from the therapeutic treatment of dreams. Our friend Linda Schiller, who's a psychotherapist and has a book called PTS Dreams, has been wonderful for that. I've learned a lot from her and her books about the therapeutic side of it. But I have the experiential side, not only in my own experience, but in working at places like Reddit, where I know what people dream about when they dream about nightmare, when they have dark dreams and nightmares. I know what the content is like. I've worked through the interpretation process with them, and I can give them the sorts of tips and advice for getting into it. So it will help them to break down the dream and understand that it's a story told using symbolism, and that they can use that as a starting point, an entry point is what I like to call it, to get into the dream to understand it.
So story using symbolism. That's what I heard you say there.
Yeah,
okay,
that's my thing. Because I teach dream interpretation as a process, and I teach all the schools of thought about it, and then I also have my own way of approaching it. And I often have to start with people who they don't have no background like we do in all the various schools of thought of dream interpretation. So I start them with this. A dream is a story told using symbolism. And then I tell them that symbolism is the native language of your unconscious mind, and your unconscious is where your dreams are created. So this is how this side of your mind that you are dialoguing with in your dreams speaks to you. This is its language. It uses pictures that are meaningful. The pictures are put into context and they're strung together to tell a story. And it's a lot like Egyptian hieroglyphs. If you see a hieroglyph and it's one of the Egyptian gods, it's not just the name of the god, it's what that god meant to those people at that time and place. It has all the cultural references embedded in it. Another comparison would be like an astrological sign. You might see the sign of Sagittarius and you just think, oh, that's Sagittarius. But the sign itself is a symbol for everything that it represents, which includes all the qualities and characteristics of someone born under that sign. So in the same sort of way, a dream symbol is embedding information into it that is, you know it while you're dreaming. You understand it subconsciously because you're now in the world of the unconscious, and you're able to directly access the information that is known to that side of your mind. So as you walk through the dream, you are interfacing with the symbol, but really it's with the information that's embedded in the symbol. It's what's behind it. Or as Scott Sparrow says, it's a co-creative process, and the unconscious is pulling up the content, but the dream content is actually an interface between you and the deeper structures of yourself where this stuff is arising from.
So here's something I've been mulling over, Jason. It's like, why aren't they more explicit? Why can't the dreams just say, oh, yeah, you're having troubles with your job. Get out of there. Like, right?
Yeah, I have had a few like that where we're very straightforward, but I would say 99% of the time they are embedded in, it's very richly symbolic. And I think it's because it's the native language of the unconscious mind. It doesn't use I think that our original mind, and I'm talking about as a species, and we have inherited a mind that's millions of years and probably hundreds of thousands of generations old. When you go back to the beginning of the human species, or as Carl Jung said, he said there is a million-year-old man in all of us, meaning there's an original man, that forefather, the original, the Adam and Eve, in the allegorical sense, the genetic sense, they are still within us. That mind that we inherited, which is the mind of nature, speaks to us through pictures. I think that before advanced language developed in human beings, that we communicated in a way that was more picture based,
Right.
but not necessarily drawing pictures for each other, which we can see the cave art on the walls, and say, oh, this is 50,000 years old, and this is how they communicated. But I think there was something deeper going on because the picture speaks to you. When you look at the picture, it speaks to your heart. And I think that as human beings, that we originally spoke to each other in a much more intuitive sort of way, and that maybe we use sounds in a very limited sort of way. We didn't really use advanced language. So I think that our dreams speak to us in symbols because that is how it developed. It developed itself internally to speak that way.
Okay. Yeah, that kind of resonates. Like it's a kind of a pre-verbal part of our brain.
Yes.
Yeah. Or maybe not even pre-verbal, but non-verbal, because it's never going to develop language. So that's the provenance of the prefrontal cortex and the kind of more later parts of our brain that evolved later.
Which, as we know, developed, that prefrontal cortex is mostly shut off while we're dreaming unless you're lucid dreaming.
Yes.
So that part of your brain simply isn't active. That's also why people generally can't read while they're dreaming, because that portion of the brain is not active. I get asked this a lot at Reddit.
Okay.
And I go, well, look, I know exceptions to this because I know people who've trained their minds to be able to activate those normally dormant centers while they're dreaming. They can activate them and they can read in dreams. They can read very clearly, line by line on a book if they want to.
Are you saying when they're lucid dreaming, or what?
Just while they're dreaming, because their experience of dreaming is in general is more conscious than the average person, but it's taken them usually years of practice in lucid dreaming and those various sorts of techniques to be able to get their mind to fully activate while they're dreaming, so they can do things like read very easily. They can communicate verbally with the dream source. You can ask it to manifest if you're like, there's something about this dream I'm not understanding. And while you are dreaming, you can communicate with the source behind the dream and say, tell me what it is that I'm missing right now. Tell me what it is that I need to know. Tell me what is really happening here so I can better understand it. And it can communicate to you in words.
And that's like in a lucid dream, or do people ever sometimes think of asking, like, well, what's really going on here, even if they're not lucid dreaming?
I would say both. It's easier to do while you're lucid dreaming,
right.
But I have difficulty lucid dreaming after all the years of training trying to do this. There's a part of me that just wants to stay asleep and don't bother me. Right. So I love people like, Ian Wilson and Robert Wagner, and they tell these amazing stories of what they can do in their lucid dreams. And, I could just sit there and feel a little envy, like, well, I just kind of like to sleep. But I have trained my mind to be a little more aware while I'm dreaming, and all the years of dream analysis of my own dreams have really helped me to be able to engage more with the content. I'm really into doing it when I'm awake. And I know that's part of experiential dream work too, and what you teach and what Leslie Ellis teaches. And I've also learned it through systems such as Gestalt and Jung's active imagination technique, where you can engage with that side of your mind while you're awake. I sometimes do it when I'm fully awake and focused on something, but I can also, it's better to do or more conducive when I get myself into sort of a light meditative state. Close my eyes, go within, do my breathing techniques, focus on my third eye, use the energy of my body, maybe do a little bit of yoga or qigong or something like that to kind of get everything flowing. And then I found that I could enter back into the dream and work with the content, but in a conscious sort of way. So let's just say that it's like lucid dreaming, but I'm awake.
Yes.
And
right.
I'm better at that. I'm not so good at being able to wake myself up consciously, but keep my body asleep.
Well,
the dream tends to get unstable on me.
Well, that's one of the things that Carl Jung calls active imagination, as I understand it, and it's something that he found very, very valuable. and I have it as well. You are listening to The Dream Journal. My name is Catherine Bell. My guest today is Jason DeBord. We're talking about nightmares, lucid dreaming, what is reality, intelligence behind the dream, anything like that. Jason's new book is called Nightmares, Your Guide to Interpreting Your Darkest Dreams. This is The Dream Journal. My name is Catherine Bell. Our guest today is Jason DeBord.
He was gonna share a dream about seeing a man who was on fire and had been impaled through the chest with a sapling.
Wow.
And he was able to become semi-lucid and call down water on the man because he felt sympathy for him. And of course, you know that everything in a dream is a representation of yourself for the most part. So when he sees that image of the man crucified through the chest, and burning alive in eternal torment, like can't die, but it's an eternal torment, he's actually seeing a vision of himself.
Right.
And on our podcast, The Dreams That Shape Us, we had a personal episode for him to explore some of his dreams, and that was one of the ones that we talked about. And he gained some really deep insight into that nightmare. I do want to say that it's oftentimes when we work with nightmares and with dreams in general, we're not talking about just walking into somebody's office or, following a process like my Dreams 1, 2, 3 process. And magically, by the end, you're going to know everything about the dream. There's often an unfolding process that happens where maybe you understand a layer of it initially, and then more insights come to you over time. I've been having dreams about untrustworthy characters. One of them was a Rothschild, and one of the Rothschild banking dynasty trillionaire people out there. And it followed up a night or two later with a dream about Dick Cheney. And the one with Dick Cheney had me where he wanted me to give a presentation about dreams, and I realized as I was getting ready, I'm like, man, I don't have my notes with me. I'm pulling lint out of my pocket and I'm actually looking for a notebook. I'm like, well, what in the world, And then I realized that it was only a pretense. He wanted me there because he wanted these other people to be there so that they could, he could have access to them. I was the name that drew them in. And the pretense was that they were going to be there to have a presentation for me to help them better understand their dreams. But he was actually had a hidden agenda or a secret agenda. And so when I pulled out of that, I'm like, well, here's another untrustworthy character. And of course, the old, the first thing to do, you always ask what you see about yourself in your dream characters. And it's not that there was anything that was untrustworthy, but it helped me to realize that there was a project that I've had on the back burner. There are other people involved with this project. And when we reached a wall that's going to require some real climbing to get over. And that's where I stopped because I said, I don't have time for this right now. And it seems like what the dreams are doing is they're pulling from that and saying, this is something that's waiting for you to do some work on. Because in both dreams, it has a work sort of theme to it, like I'm about to get ready to work. But I initially I went through the processes of association, simplifying the dream content, amplifying it, doing things like that. And I got some initial hits, but I wasn't really sure about it. But it's continuing now. And what's really interesting is not only am I getting more insights, I'm having more dreams that help me to clarify what that initial dream meant. So I want to just make it clear to your listeners that if they're into dream work, expect that this is an ongoing process. Don't expect to be able to just walk in, figure out the dream, one and done, wham, bam, and you're done. Right. This is something that you're going to continually engage with, and you can do it at any time. I'm this dream has been in the back of my mind, and it just kind of keeps coming forward with new information or new avenues for me to explore to help to understand what it is that it's trying to communicate to me. I find the same thing happens with nightmare content too. People want to get away from it. They naturally shy away from the nightmare content because it's difficult,
Well,
it's
it's
emotional,
painful. Yeah.
it's painful, but it needs them to engage with it.
Yeah.
It wants them to dance. It needs them to explore where the sources of the pain and dysfunction and the other things that the nightmare is focused on or bringing out or highlighting. It needs you to do something about it. And so it will continually come up it'll bubble up when it wants to get your attention and ask you to engage with it. And it's a process that will unfold over time. And if you do engage with it and go through this process, the reward, as we know from therapeutic treatment of nightmares, once you get the message, what happens, Catherine?
Well, the dreams stop coming or they evolve. I wouldn't say they stop coming. I would say that they change.
They change.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the darkly emotional content is drained out of them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they're allowed to evolve. And this was another thing when people ask me about nightmares, I like to compare it to shock therapy. The dreaming mind doesn't like to torment you. It's not like it's a sadist that's like, oh, you're asleep now, I'm going to get you. You're under my power. It's doing it because you need the shock. The nightmare is the shock and it delivers it. And the therapy part of it is if you can respond to it and go, something chronic is going on in my life. It's chronic, it's dysfunctional. It needs my attention. Something needs to be healed. It needs to be fixed. It needs to be changed. What is it? You look at the dream content for clues to that. But oftentimes, Catherine, when I get people to this point in the process of going through a nightmare, they can often go, yeah, I know what's causing dysfunction in my life. I know what's causing the pain. And then they can relate that and say, well, I'm in a relationship that's just killing me. Mm-hmm. My job is causing too much stress. I've got this, and sometimes it's not necessarily bad, dysfunctional in that sense. It's, I wanted to be a singer when I was a kid, but my parents made me be an engineer because that was a practical career. So now their dreams are picking up on that. They have something that they really want to do with their life to develop themselves as a person. And it's been calling for their attention. And in initial dreams, it's often a gentler sort of call, nudge. And if they don't get the message, it keeps nudging and it keeps hitting harder. And so the dreams that turn into nightmares, there was initial dreams that were not nightmares. It tried to communicate the message, you didn't get it. And then it keeps cranking up the juice. Mm-hmm. Now the volume is on 11 and it's really trying to get your attention.
Okay. Well, that brings me to like the question of like, even if you know what a nightmare is about, it doesn't mean that the nightmares are going to stop coming. And like makes me think about trauma, like veterans or people who've been in automobile accidents or sexually abused, and that you may know what your trauma is, and yeah, that doesn't make the nightmare immediately go away. And we have a caller on the line, but let me just get your thoughts about that for a minute. I'm just going to say hi to Ronnie. We're going to get to you in just a second. And I want to just hear what you have to say, Jason, about the idea of traumatic nightmares.
Yeah, there are. When I read through Linda's book on PTS dreams, post-traumatic stress dreams, and I've had them myself because it took me a long time to realize that the symptoms I was experiencing was post-traumatic stress. I would say that it is maybe the number 2 or 3 cause of nightmares. I follow Jung's thinking on the subject, which is the conflict between the conscious and the unconscious mind is the number 1 source of nightmares. And I agree with him on that. Mm-hmm. But I think that in his time, well, maybe I can't make this statement. It seems, I was going to say in his time, maybe trauma wasn't as prevalent in society in general, among people, that there wasn't as much trauma. What I'm seeing now, especially after what we've been living through these last few years, is I'm seeing people who are severely traumatized simply because they're alive and operating in our society. And they are also, because of the conditions that we're in, where people seem to have lost touch with their hearts. And so we're trying to operate in an environment that is caustic, uncaring, unfeeling for the most part. It's not everybody's life, but it's traumatizing us. And so I'm seeing a lot of that. And so I'm seeing it work into people's dreams. So that's why I would say trauma-based nightmares are probably in the top 2 or 3 now sources. And it works the same way of engaging with the content and trying to work your way through it to healing. But there is a different set of tools, and Linda Schiller's book PTS Dreams is great for that.
Which is fabulous. We've had Linda on a few times. She's a wonderful with nightmares. So I want to say hi to Ronnie from Santa Cruz. Thank you so much for calling in.
Hi.
Hi.
I wanted to talk about a friend of mine that had a dream about an owl.
Oh yeah.
It was passing by our window at night, and it was a recurring dream. And I was wondering. I told her the owl is sacred, and to write it down 12 times. And then I was wondering also, is there another kind of a different way to interpret that type of a dream?
Well, I like your approach, Ronnie. I mean, I want to hear what Jason has to say, but I just want to say that that's really really caring of you to like give her a kind of ritualistic way of exploring the dream.
Thank you.
Yeah. Jason, so what do you have to say to Ronnie here?
I've heard a lot of things about owls that are various opinions on it, and they can sometimes be very different from each other. Some people will look at owls as messengers of the night. Others who would look at it as owls as symbols for wisdom, for knowledge. There's some who could see them as symbols for reclusiveness. We have owls around here in Tucson, Arizona, and they're everywhere, but we have them living basically in our yard. And they're not the friendliest creatures, but they are beautiful. And so what I found is that you want to engage with the symbol and understand what it means personally to you. Sometimes the rituals that have one idea about what a symbol can mean implant the idea that that's the only thing that it could mean. And what we want to do is give the dreamer the opportunity to interact with that as a living image that is bubbling up from within them. So if you're going to do some kind of a ritual or a process to engage with a dream symbol, I would recommend that it's something that is an interactive sort of interplay between you and it, to allow it to speak with you and reveal to you what it means. Because it will tell you, if you work with it, it will reveal what it is that it is there to do. It has a purpose why it is in your dream, and it wants you to know, but it can't just tell you, because you need to work through it and figure it out on your own. This was something I learned about metaphors that really clicked things into place for me, for why do dreams use this metaphorical imagery? And I learned this from psychology. It might have been Ernest Rossi's body-mind psychology. I was just reading something about it one day, and I ran across this thing that said that metaphors get around our ego defenses and barriers. They leap over our blind spots. And I went, damn, I get it now. The owl, let's say, as a metaphor, has an idea that's embedded into it. This is something that the ego is either blind to or resistant to, or it simply just does not know yet, blind to in that sense. And it wants you to know, but it can't tell you. But the metaphor gets around the blocks to knowing and helps you to understand what it means, and it can hit you like lightning. Suddenly the electricity arcs over and you go, I get it. There's a metaphor in this, in the same way that you understand a metaphor, and it helps you to there's a relationship between two ideas that are unlike each other. A metaphor makes a comparison that reveals the hidden relationship between them. This is why our dreams use metaphors, because they help us to see the hidden relationships and associations between things. So with that in mind, I would go back to that person who had the dream about the owl and try to get them to understand it as a metaphorical image and then have it speak to them. Ritual is a great way of doing it, but I would suggest that you not go into a ritual with a predetermined idea about what the symbol means, because you want the symbol itself to speak to you.
You know what?
Right.
Yeah, Ronnie. So what's coming up for you when you hear this? Like, what is your thought about that dream?
Well, I don't think it needs exorcism or anything like that.
Right.
You did bring that up. I was trying to I was trying to relate to what she was seeing.
Yeah, well, I really love that you felt that you're a safe place for her to tell you her dreams. Like, I think that's really a testimony to your relationship with this person, that she sees that you're a safe place to tell these dreams and to really think about how to approach them. And I think that's a really big compliment to you as a friend, Ronnie.
Yeah, I try to stay positive.
Yeah. And as I imagine this idea of the ritual and going through the dream 12 times, it makes me think of like the whole metaphorical aspect that Jason's talking about too here, that maybe like exploring 12 different metaphors. Like each time you write the dream, think about it in a particular metaphorical context, and then see which one resonates the most strongly. And there may be more than one, and keep going.
Write down the owl is sacred.
Yeah, the owl is sacred.
12 times, yeah.
I see, yeah. And, but there's something about owls that are sacred to me as well, and that they're kind of messengers from the night. And sometimes I think of they're kind of metaphors for dreams themselves. It's surprising how often owls show up in dreams and among the people I work with and in my own dreams too. So it's like they're kind of coming through, like they're like the dreams themselves in a way. And I do believe that dreams themselves are sacred.
Thank you for the insight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, if we can keep Ronnie, go ahead. I mean, I'm going to make just a final comment on this, and I hope that you'll keep listening. I interact with people with their dream content a lot, and they come to me for help with their dreams. And this is a work that we do that is a sacred work. The dream worker or dream interpreter is one of the oldest specialized professions in the history of humanity. Huh. So among families and communities, there have been dream interpreters going back thousands of years. Artemidorus's book, written in the 2nd century AD, about dream interpretation, you can see little hints that he feels himself to be part of a lineage of people who work with dreams. And he doesn't maybe say this explicitly in his book, but I say this. We are ambassadors between the world of night and day. And if you think of that also as heaven and earth, night being heaven, earth, being day, or reverse it if you want to. But the point is that you're kind of an ambassador between these two worlds. So the work that you're doing when you help people with dreams is a sacred work.
Yeah.
Now,
absolutely.
And I would say that you can do anything to engage with them with their dream is going to be helpful, as long as it's not deliberately misleading or ignorantly misleading. So I want to be clear that what he did to help the person engage with the owl as an image, a living image from within them, anything that he can do at that place is a good thing to do. Mm-hmm. And I will add the last thing, what Linda Schiller would say about this, is be the owl. Yep. Feel yourself in the owl's body, inhabiting it from its point of view. We can, and anyone out there that wants to work with other people with dreams, when they come to you with a powerful image like that, you can creatively play with it. You don't have to analyze the dream. You don't have to be Dr. Freud or Dr. Jung. You can play with it and just suggest to them, like, well, wow, what does that owl feel to you like? Can you feel its wings spreading? Can you see through its eyes as it glides over the landscape?
I'm going to jump in, Jason. I'm going to reframe that. Instead of saying, can you do this? I would say, if this were my dream, I could imagine that I could feel its wings spreading.
Thank you. Yes. And you're encouraging them to do it themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
I contemplated the dream for a long time.
Sorry, Ronnie, what was that?
I contemplated far too long.
Well, speaking with other people about dreams is very powerful. So I'm glad that you have this relationship with your friend, and hopefully you can tell her some of your dreams, and that you have your own little dream sharing community. It can be very powerful to have even one person to share dreams with. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing these dreams, Ronnie.
Yeah, thanks, Ronnie.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye now.
Hey, Steve told me that they got snowed in, and he's listening right now.
Okay. Well, we're wrapping up. We have a few more minutes. If you have anything you want to say on Steve's behalf, Steve Ernenwine is Jason DeBord's partner on the Dreams That Shape Us podcast, which is another podcast you might want to check out if you're interested in dreams. So tell me what's up for you, Jason. What's about Steve?
So yeah, he's saying he's listening, and he'll call in if he can. He says he's in a big truck that's making a lot of noise because he's plowing the snow in Minneapolis where he lives. But yeah, we do in the Dreams That Shape Us, we take a person's story about the dreams that have shaped their lives, and it can be specific dreams, and usually we always explore specific dreams and their content, but also what changes as you engage with this part of your life and how it can shape your life in great ways. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of run the gamut of the different ways that dreams can help you to make decisions, work through roadblocks, more deeply understand yourself, your partners, to connect with people who have left this life. So we've done this, and we give a long format to explore the person, their life, their dreams, and the impact of their dreams on their life. So it really gives space to breathe into it. Steve is a composer and musician, so he has music that plays at various times to kind of enhance the mood and create a soundscape. And we have a lot of fun with it. So the Dreams That Shape Us is the podcast, and it's on all the major, podcast delivery platforms.
So Jason, how can folks get in touch with you? And I'd also like to see if you have a few short comments or encouragements to as final thoughts for our listeners.
Sure, jmdebord.com, jmdebord.com, and that gets you into all the various things that I do. I've found that just writing books is not enough, and I'm a writer. I'm an editor. I'm published through Hampton Roads and Visible Ink Press. So I have really good publishers behind me. Very glad to have that. So having that kind of full support as an author is great. But I also found that people are really into the online content. So I recorded a lot of classes on video with a PowerPoint presentation, basically, and made that available at dreamschool.net. So for people who learn better with having something visual to stimulate them other than just words on a page, that's going to help them. You have my podcast, of course, if you're more of an audio type of person. Mm-hmm. And then there's r/dreams, which is dreams.reddit.com. Catherine, we have over 200,000 subscribers now.
That's amazing.
And you've seen dream communities at places like Facebook or the IASD website and stuff. And you usually have a hardcore who kind of keep things running, and maybe 20, 30, 40 people who are regular participants. And you do have communities that might be larger than that. But what I've seen is a lot of them are ghost towns. Yep. They'll have some initial interest and then they just kind of disappear. So our community is very large and vibrant, but it's also geared towards a younger audience. You'll see a lot of memes and stuff. But for the dream workers out there, please come by. This is your chance of really connecting with the people who need your knowledge, and they're there and they're hungry for you to come in and share what you know with them.
Thank you, Jason, or should I say RadOwl. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to talk to you.
Been great pleasure. Thank you. And I was really looking forward to this, and I'm glad we had a chance to do it.
Absolutely.
I know you reach a lot of people in our community, Catherine, our community of dream workers.
Well, we'll have to get you on again because there was plenty more to talk about.
It was. It sure was. We didn't even touch on it. Yeah.
Nope. That's all right. There's always more. Thanks so much, Jason. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. So next week, our guest will be Sarah Janes. Joining us from England, Sarah will be speaking about what it means to be initiated into dream mysteries and her passion for Egyptology. If you want to join the conversation live, you can tune in Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Pacific on the ksqd.org live stream. The podcast replay will be released on the Monday following the show. I am Catherine Bell. This has been the Dream Journal. Thanks for listening. Find out more about my own dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. Email me at catherine@ksqd.org, katherine@ksqd.org. The Dream Journal is produced at the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, California. Archives and 24/7 live stream at ksqd.org. I'd like to thank Rick Cluffel, engineer and music creator. You can find the ambient music at pendemiad.com. I'd like to thank Tony Russimano, Eva Milady. This intro music that was at the beginning of the show is Water Over Stones, and this outro music is Everything, both by Mood Science. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.
All the boys and the girls and everyone in the world knows that so much is wrong, but much more